Well, I'm really excited to share with you today my lesson on waterfalls. It's a brand new lesson for me. I can't believe that over the years I've avoided this lesson, but all of a sudden it's just had such a great appeal to me. We have beautiful waterfalls just within a few miles of us. So I started taking hikes out to Copper Falls and a few of the local waterfalls, and the idea of painting a local waterfall appeals to me. But for today's lesson, I'm going to try to put together a generic lesson that's going to cover a lot of different areas. Not only the falls, but also the areas where the water backs up into these little areas, and then it's reflecting. So it's falls and reflecting. And then I just love waterfalls in the fall. How about that? So there's a really big difference when you look at pictures. This isn't a waterfalls, but just the idea of the reflections in the fall colors. So this appeals to me so much. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the waterfalls in the fall, and you'll just be able to, I mean, look at how beautiful. So that means we're going to be involved in foliage. And I love doing foliage. Some of you are familiar with this, using a brush that has a natural fiber to it. And we'll be just literally throwing the paint to get the foliage that frames in the falls. Now, another area that interested me was I didn't necessarily like all this extra stuff happening around the outside of the falls. I like the way this fall zigs and zags and doesn't come just down the center, which can be very boring. So I definitely look for falls that zig and zag. But then I thought, you know what? I'm going to look into doing a vignette style. In other words, where you soften the edges purposely, just with letting them melt out, or just ending before the edge of your paper. It becomes a vignette. And I really like that look, and I did this on my new pencil sketch app. So now you can see this was the first painting I did, and this is just a paper of it. But you can see at that point I was really into big falls. I was still getting the zig and the zag, but I wanted to just have a lot of space where we could have the energy of the falls coming down. And I was doing all these in half sheets. You can see one here. And I actually have the falls coming in from off the picture. Wow, this is a big falls. Zigzagging again, dropping down. And I also like to have the falls end at the bottom. So you've got this, what I call bam. In other words, this atmospheric look where it's these little particles of mist are rising up from the force of the falls, and then it just goes out into reflections at the bottom. Again, you can see the vignette style. Now, when I started painting these to begin with, I actually painted the water first and then framed it in, and I realized afterwards that's not as good approach as when you actually paint everything, the rocks, the foliage, frame it in, and then do the waterfalls. For today's lesson, we're going to do a painting similar to this. And here you can see the fall colors, which are literally framing in the water. And you can see all the rocks, very dark. I like to paint the rocks very dark where they're framing the falls in. But see, on the edges of the lost edges, just melted out so they go lighter and softer and just end. And then where the waters back up, you can see we actually have reflections. I actually took some of those greens and reflected them into the water. Here I took that dark rock color and reflected it into the water. Anytime the water's back up, we're having reflections here too even. And then where the water is spraying, we're going to do this bam. I'm going to show you how to do that right off just like this, just using a simple tool. So I'm excited to get started. So I'm going to start out just doing a very quick little rendition here of a big waterfall. And what I like to do is I still like to frame it in with a few dark shapes, in this case some rocks, and then maybe another rock over here and another rock sticking up. And then you can just keep going. I recommend, if you decide that you want to do waterfalls with the massive water falling, always try to have it ending where you've got the bam at the bottom here. That's really cool. So I'm very quickly going to wet this and put some color down, all in one, and show you how I do them. I'm going to put this color down all at once, and then I'm going to show you how you can just get that water to do a massive fall. Oh boy, it's cool. So I'm going to start with just some warm color. This is my Quin Burnt Orange, and this is going to be like the rocks framing it in. And what I like to do is come back again after I've put down a little bit of this color. I like to come in and do a second approach so you're getting some variety. See how it's darker at the base? And then I come in with the cobalt blue right on top. And see, as soon as I add the cobalt, we get the grade down, because cobalt and Quin Burnt Orange are complements. So we're going to just come in here and just make some rocks very quickly. Some cooler, some warmer. Same thing over here. Remember, I wet this too, so we're just going to frame it in here. And notice I'm starting the vignette style. Once I put the first layer in, I like to come in and put a second, a little bit darker. Here, we'll frame it in here. A little bit darker at the base of each rock. Now I'm going to come in with my cobalt. Cobalt. And then I'm going to add, this is pretty cool, wax paper. It does all the work for you. Now I'm just going to drop this wax paper over the whole thing. And we'll just give it a minute to dry, and I'll come back and throw some waterfalls for you. Well, this is a few minutes later now. This has had a chance to dry. And remember, I'm not trying to make individual rocks. I'm going to be showing you that later. But just to have some idea that there's something supporting this waterfall. And so I'm going to show you how to make this kind of a waterfall where it's falling great distance. You know, it just, whoa, a long ways. So let's see what happens here. What I usually like to do is just take a gray, and a gray is very easy. You just grab some Quin Burnt Orange, make a little puddle, and then some cobalt blue, and you could also use Winsor Orange with cobalt, but I like this one because we're going to use the same color to make the rocks. And then these two colors combined make a beautiful gray. So we're going to just go for a cooler gray here. I'll pull this over a little so you can see my mixture. You can see how I have a puddle of each. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for this cooler side. And I'm going to let gravity do a lot of the work. So I'm tipping this up, and I'm thinking now how this water is coming in from up here. And see, when you have a brush like this is made out of squirrel hair. And what it does, I'm just holding it way back here. When you just throw it like this, it just starts going. It just flies off your brush. This will not happen with a synthetic brush. So I'm just thinking about the directional flow of the water. I'm keeping it on the cooler side. I got water coming in from both sides. How about that? And down it goes. Whoa, down it goes. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to throw water at this so that this can start running down. And I'm going to have a tissue very handy because when this runs, I want to catch it. And if it lands where I don't want it, I just remove it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into moving water. We're just going to come along and we're going to add water here. And when it decides to run, because of this gravity, we're just going to let it go. And it's amazing, if you look at your photograph, it's actually quite dark at the top. So now we're going to just paint this. We're going to do this later too. We're just going to paint parts where the water starts and just keep going until we get to the bottom. And I love the way the colors are breaking up. Can you see how they're going between the warm and the cool? It's pretty cool. So take your time, let it happen. I think this very inexpensive little brush is the key. See, I can also do a dry brush effect, just rolling it like this. So if throwing isn't your thing, just hold it on its side and just let it fall. And I love the way it breaks into warm and cool all by itself. Now down here, I'm going to just add water, let it run, because at the bottom of this falls, I'm going to support it here with this big cup. At the bottom of the falls here, I want to start lifting it away into that atmospheric feeling. I didn't do any masking, so I don't have the BAM working for me here. This is just falling water. And we're almost at the bottom here. So see what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take a tissue and make it go back into the BAM. And we'll be doing this too. We're going to use the masking and the tissue to get this BAM, BAM, BAM. And one more thing I haven't told you, we're going to use salt. So now I'm going to put salt in here too. Very cool. Now, as the water continues to move, it's going to get a little darker. It usually falls. I think what I'll do is I'll make it back here a little bit. So now here's another little falls. And of course this wouldn't be a solid line. We're going to break that up with our tissue. Yes. And now we've got a little bit of waterfall in here. And then it's backing up here. So you just go back and forth between where the water backs up. And see, this brush just does it for you. And then when you get to where the water's starting to fall again, you just take it and let it come down. It's falling. It's falling. Look at that. And I'm not even throwing it. It's just happening all by itself. Here too. Now you always have to put a little bit of color down so you can take it away. So if I come in here with just some water, let this get kind of soft and wet, get my tissue out, and then I can back this up into the foam, just like I did up here. And a little salt. Now what's happening here? So as the water falls here, and down here now it's going back and forth this way. So I really recommend you do a little practice like this, especially when it's time after you've done your rocks and everything's ready to go. And now I'm going to wet this so there's just a little bit of color here. Then I'm going to take it away. See, and if I had BAM on here, it'd be even better. And now we'll just flatten this out and put this down. Little salt. So there you have it. Just a little practice so we can get the feeling of the falling water, the mist rising up, backing water. And see, of course, you can always go back and get this even darker. The reflections next to the rock are much darker. Reflections are actually darker than the subject. So we'll, of course, go darker where the water backs up. And where it backs up, we'll go darker over here. And then your BAM. And usually it's a little bit darker right at the top of the fall where it's starting to come down. You'll see a few very dark shapes in here. So don't be afraid to go a little bit darker in some of those areas at the very top. Try not to start making them exactly an inch apart. Make them as irregular as you can. And a little bit darker at the top of this. Well, that was fun. Now I'm feeling ready to start. I hope it works for you. Before we start our main waterfalls, what I want to do is just show you some of the falls that are in our area. This happens to be Echo Falls, and of all things, it got featured on the 2017 visitor guide for Bayfield. And look, in the fall, I'm excited. I love this little waterfalls. It's only a couple miles off the road, and you can see the same falls change so much over the seasons. This is in early spring, and even this is beautiful, all the rocks and the zigzag feature. See, like this is hard to paint right down the middle. I do want to caution you about that. But if you can just back it out a bit, give it the falls, maybe some lead in with rocks or whatever appeals to you. But try to keep it interesting. Like I probably wouldn't put that tree in. So editing is important. And then Gary and I took a nice walk to Copper Falls. It's about, I don't know, about 50 miles away. Beautiful falls in the spring. It's just gorgeous. You can see we were there in the spring and it was roaring. But then I happened to go on the internet and I started seeing the same image that I was at in the fall. And I mean, it gets better. So that's when I made the decision, I've got to paint a fall scene. But the falls themselves, see, this is too many. This is way too many, especially for my demo. I don't want to keep you up all night. So I tried to find one that would have a simplicity to it. And this is awesome. This has a beautiful falls, and it's got waters that back up. And I like the way the rocks here frame it in. So this is the kind of thing I'm going to do. Let me show you a few other falls that I've painted. This is actually more like a babbling brook, but at the same time, I just like the way you get the very white water, and then you get the very dark water, and then you frame it in with the dark rocks in the foliage. And again, putting that in the vignette, I thought that was a very attractive waterfalls. And you can see I've done it on a number of occasions, keeping it kind of close to the image, just a very simple foliage. But then just recently I decided, oh no, I got to do that with the fall foliage. And you can see it's really important that you do a lot of this BAM, these little white. I do that with masking. It's the only masking I do. That's another mistake I made. When I first started painting these, I was taking and I was putting the masking where the falls were. And it just doesn't work. You have to have soft areas next to the rushing water. And so I found out that just coming in and bam, 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 to get all that wonderful atmospheric those little particles breaking up there. That's all you need. Everything else is just straight painting. Now this one isn't finished, and I'll get back to this later, but this is an example where the foliage, I just throw the paint in, and then I come in later and add the trees. Some of the trees are light against the dark, and others are dark against the light. So we'll have a little fun with that. Here's another very tall one, and you can see the foliage again. This doesn't look like anything when you're throwing the paint down, but then later, when you come in and add the trees, it's like magic. They become fall trees. And you can see here we've got some backup water here with the reflections and the falling water and the reflections and the falling water. And then this, of course, is reflecting from the very top. So we have this was really, really fun to paint. I loved every minute of it. It was really fun. Well, we're finally at the stage where I get to start the actual painting. Now you'll notice that this is watercolor paper stretched on a frame. And these frames are great. You can just buy them at any store. We have them here in our online store. And you just put the corners together. And we show this in a previous lesson, how to do this. And so this is not canvas. It looks like canvas, but it's not. This is watercolor paper, 140-pound cold-pressed arches that is slipped around the edge of a frame. And so you can see this is got to be framed because you can see all the staples. So I got to show it off now. Look at this. All you do is drop it in a frame. It looks absolutely fabulous. You no longer see the staples on the side. And then you just go to the back and slip in 2, 4, 6, 8 screws into the backing. We also have another style. I'll show you that one too. Here's another style. You can see it's got a little bit wider frame drop here and a little bit wider outer edge. Either one looks really great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on stretched watercolor paper. What I'm going to do is show you a full gallery wrap. This is a full sheet of watercolor paper that's been wrapped around those frames that you just put together and stapled on the back. So now what we have here is, see, all the staples are on the back. So if I paint this in a vignette style, I'll just have nice white edges like the one I showed you before. Or if I want to, I can paint to the edge and go all the way around. Paint it all the way around. We're going to get started. And what I'm going to do now is draw a waterfall for you. So what I want to do is get a position here. This is going to be where the water is in the background. And then this is where my foliage is going to be. So eventually I'm going to come in here and I'll be drawing in some trees. Not all of them, but some parts of the trees. Maybe a smaller one here. So this is going to be foliage. And then what I want to do is I want to have the waterfalls, the major waterfalls, not dead center. See how it's approximately 1/3 of the way over. So this is perfect. And it's going to fall down. And then right in here, it's going to have a big bam, bam. It'll be dark in here again. And then the water's going to back up over here. And I might even just add a few rocks here. Almost like a lake shore. And maybe what I'll do is show the water way in the distance. So I don't have it all one cut right in half. We'll have a little part here. And these rocks can be at different levels, up and down. This is going to be my major waterfall here, and the water's coming in from over here too. falling down. Big bam here. And then I'm going to add a rock in here. And this is going to have reflections underneath it. I think I'm going to drop this down a little bit. And I'm going to have some more water falling in over here. And this is going to be reflecting. So as it reflects, it'll come down approximately like that. And see how it goes off at an angle? It'll start to go off at an angle. So this is going to be dark in here. And now I'm ready to start putting in some rocks down here that are going to frame in the actual waterfall. So these can be any size I want. And even some of them could come in and go off at an angle. Anything to get a little variety. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my water fall here. And then this is going to be another big bam here. Another big bam. There'll be some rocks here. And I'm going to have some backup water over here too. So some rocks in here and the water backing up. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue drawing this, and when I get back we're going to get started with the rocks. Now this is really, really important. We're going to do the BAM next. And for the BAM, I really like using a white masking. I know you can't see what you're doing on the paper itself, but at least you're not putting on a dark color. You're putting on what will be white in the final. That's what we're doing. We're saving the white of the paper. So by putting on this white mask, we're actually saving it as white. So just to show you what I want you to do, I'm going to have you take your Incredible mask, or there's another one that's very good made by Winsor Newton, and you always stir maskoid. It's not a big deal for what we're doing, but it's just a good habit to get into. Don't shake it up. Everybody wants to shake it. Don't shake it. Just give it a stir. When you open it, always check. See, there's always a little goober or two that get in the cover, and I always take time to clean that out so that it probably won't leak in case that tips over. See, this stuff is dangerous. It'll cause a leak. So now that's ready, and I'm just going to use a little palette knife here. You can see it's got a nice round tip. You can see it better here. Nice round tip. And so I'm going to dip this in and just get really close to my subject and do bam, bam, bam. And see, that's the water crashing down. And it's going to go all across there. Bam, 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 bam. The trick is to touch, not to touch it, but to get really close. I've watched students do it and they just sort of dribble a little bit like this. That's not what you want. You want this really fine. So it means getting close. I'm very close to the table. See how this is loaded? And all I do is tip it to the side and bam, 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 bam. I just bam until it runs out. And look at that beautiful effect. It's really gonna work. So let's do it on the real thing. And when that dries, we're gonna get started. Okay, we're going to do the bam on my future painting right here. And I don't need any bam in the background. That's all pretty far away. But what I need is I need bam right through here where the water is hitting the flat area. Now remember, I don't know if you notice this, but I'm kind of wiping a little bit away so it's not dripping. And now here we go. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam. And I can't really see what's happening. It's a lot of trust here. Wipe a little bit and bam, bam, bam. And this whole area is going to get it. And up all the way up to the center. I'm mostly pushing it this way, not this way. Now I'm going to bam over here. I'll get a little closer. This is obviously going to have water going back. And then over here, there's kind of a little roll in here. I might just have a little bit of bam here. But there's going to be a lot of bam down here. So I'm just going to get that next. Right here. Right where the water hits at the bottom. Bam, bam, bam. So you can see I didn't do just a few. I did a lot. So don't get stingy. Yo, I should do it to some rhythm and you can put it to music here. There, we're gonna let that dry and we're gonna get started. Okay, we're gonna start with the rocks. Now, there's hardly anybody who loves rocks more than me. And I'm going to do it very easily. We're gonna start with Quinacridone burnt orange. So I'm gonna make a nice puddle here of this color. And then I'm going to make a nice puddle of cobalt blue. And sometimes I might even come in with a little French ultramarine blue, which is a much darker blue. But I don't think I'll be using much of that. It's mostly these two. And what I like to do is I like to start by wetting the surface. So I've got a rather large rock here. And so I'm just going to come in and wet this. And of course I'm going to leave it kind of half wet at the end here. And I'm going to come down to the top of these rocks in the foreground here. And now I'm going to come in with just the Quin burnt orange. So I'm putting this color down and coming up to the rock in the foreground, in front of it. And I'm just going to let this get much lighter as we go out to the edge here. Lost and found. In fact, I might just come in with my water and just lose it like this. Now I'm going to get extra dark, starting at the base. And I want it dark up here too. Some little parts of this are going to get, water's going to flow right over it. And other parts are going to be a little bit softer because of the water. So I'll just come in here. So far I'm just working one color. If you don't have quinacridone burnt orange, you can use burnt sienna. Now I'm going to take the cobalt blue and put that right over it. Doesn't look like it, but this is pure cobalt going right over the quin burnt orange, which of course is making it gray and dark. Ooh, I like it. And I'm just going to let this kind of get lost back here. Now I'm going to take a combination of the two together. Here you'll see me mix cobalt and quin burnt orange. So I have the pure, and the mixed. And off and on over here, you're going to see little parts of the rock exposed. So I'm just going to pull in a little bit of that rock where it's been exposed. Over here, there's another little piece where it's exposed. I'm just going to give that a minute to kind of settle down. I want it darker at the base. And while that's settling into the paper, I'm going to talk a little bit about the wax paper. Now, wax paper has a grain to it. It's pretty incredible. When you look at wax paper, there's the cut edge and there's the selvage edge. And if you just hold this up to light, you can actually see where along the selvage, there's a grain in the paper. So if I set this down so that it's lined up with the edge of this paper, it's actually going to come in with a grain going up and down. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put this on here and just let it do its thing. And during the time that it's starting to set up, you'll see this grain happen. So now, in the meantime, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start doing this rock over here. And again, a little bit of the rock is exposed in here. Just a little bit. And I'm just going to wet some of these edges a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this wax paper on top of that to give us some interesting little textures. And I just like letting it happen. Now this water is coming across here and rolling down. So you'll notice the different directional movement. And I'm going to put paper on that too. There's some BAM up there, so it's not letting me get a good contact. Now I'm going to come over here, start with my water. So always start by wetting the rock. And I can feel the BAM. Oh, this is going to be fun. I'm not going to get a real good contact here either. And there are some areas here where the water is coming across, coming down, moving across up here. So I'm going to just, this is water, so I'm just going to wet it. And I'm going to go into my dark here and just make it pretty dark because it's a little bit of the rock that's exposed here, see? So now I'm going to come in with my quin burnt orange. I always like to put this down first. Quin burnt orange. It's a gorgeous color. And then after I've done the first application, I come back and I put more. So it's darker at the bottom. Then I come in with the pure cobalt. Now we have another little, this waterfall just goes on and on here. There's another one coming down here. Now we're all ready to the other side. Look how this is going up and down. Amazing. I remember for a long time, I could never figure out why are some of those going up and down and others are going where I want them. I finally figured it out one day. So again, this is the pure Quin burnt orange. Now because I'm close to the edge, I'm just going to let it melt out. See, I'm not painting to the edge. This is the vignette style. And over here now I'm going to come in with the blue cobalt. It's the edge of the waterfall here. I've got all kinds of bam happening. Oh, it's really fun. I can see it. And now we're going to come in again. I want this with the up and down again. So this means I want it to be parallel to the selvage edge. So just rip this off, set it down. This is my selvage edge. I just touch it on there. I'm not going to get real good contact down here because of the BAM, but I'm not concerned. See, you just put it down. It looks terrible, but don't worry about it. It's going to settle down. And look at like magic over here. This is, I can take this off and it's only been a short time. And what I like to do is I like to take this off early so that I can come in here now with this mixed color. See, I'm going to take my Quin burnt orange and my cobalt and I'm going to mix it into a dark. And almost always at the base of your rocks, it's darker. And almost always, when you do this wax paper, it peels up at the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to move in a little closer here so you can see what's happened. And I kind of like this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in here and make the base of this darker in front of the other rock, the rock that's right in front of it. So I'm going to pull it down, make it darker. As I get closer to the edge of the paper, I'm just going to take a little bit of the color that's here and pull it down. And then I'm going to soften some of these edges so it's just kind of lost. Just nice lost edges. But you can see now it's darker around these rocks. And that's what I want. And this actually looks okay up here. If you want to, see, it's still wet enough that I can pull some of these colors and manipulate them. Keep what I like, change what I don't like. If it's too busy, you can soften it. I actually kind of like it. I'm going to leave it. Oh, look at here. Okay, here's what I'm going to show you. As I was working on this side, I realized I had a little bit of a problem here. See what happened? I put this so it was this way. That was my selvage edge. That was a mistake. So, good, I get to do it over. It's still wet. So this time, we're going to wet this. I don't want it going back and forth. I want it like this, up and down. See, it's good I make mistakes. Now you might make that same mistake. Now you know how to fix it. Just rip it off. And this time, I'm going to have the selvage edge going like this. Oh my gosh. So easy. And like I say, there's so much BAM down here. I may not get the contact, but I'll fix that later. Okay. Now we're going to move on and I'm going to show you how to do some easy rocks in the foreground. This is really cool. Now the reason I put this darker over here, is so that the top of that rock will remain light, but the bottom will be dark. So you're working dark, mid-tone, light, dark, mid-tone, light. So let's do a few of these rocks. You wait until this is dry enough, and then you come in and of course you wet the rock again. This particular rock is framing the waterfall, so it's going to be dark all the way to the top. And then it's next to a rock, so I'm going to wait to paint that one. So I'll just come over here and paint this one. And I'll come over and paint this one. Now I'm going to start with the pure Quin burnt orange, just the pure color. And I want it dark up here because it's framing in that falls, but I want it light over here because it's against another rock. Same here, I'm going to come in, I'm going to make it dark at the base, but I'm going to keep it lighter at the top so it comes forward. And over here, it's going to be dark at the base, just the pure color, and I always come back and put extra pure color at the bottom, extra. And then because we're close to the edge of the paper, I just wet it and just let it do whatever it wants to do. That's all going to get lost. Now we're going to come in with the cobalt blue, just the pure cobalt, right on top. Over here, pure cobalt on top. Now people get confused. They put the orange on one side and the cobalt on the other, but you're not going to do that. You're going to put the orange onto the wet surface, then you're going to put the blue on top of it. On top. And the whole idea is that becomes the gray. As soon as the two mix on the paper, they become gray. But see how you get those elements of the warm and the cool and the dark and the mid-tone and the light? That's what we want. Now, once I put this down, I don't immediately put the wax paper on it. I wait just a little bit. So again, while we're waiting, let's do another rock. Down here I've drawn in a number of rocks, and this is going to be the bottom of my image. You can see I'm right to the edge here of my stretched paper. And I think what I'll do is I'll make this rock and then another rock in front of that and another rock behind that. So I really like to do this. Just make them up and then they just melt over here. So let me do just one more rock here. First of all, we're going to wet it. And meanwhile, we're going to keep an eye on these rascals because I have to put the wax paper down. So first of all, I'm going to wet this. And I'm going to just wet it all the way out here and let it melt out. Remember, I put down the Quin burnt orange first. And because this is in front of another rock, I'm going to put dark here where it's framing in the falls. Dark here where it's the base. But I'm just letting the color roll up into a soft light. Love it. Same here. It's going to be kind of a long edge here. And over here, I'm just going to let it go very soft. Now, after I put in that first layer, I come back and put another layer of the same dark color. But these are perfect now. So I'm going to put the paper up here. And I'm kind of random at this point. I think it's kind of fun to just stick them on here. They can do whatever they want to. So now I'm ready to put a second layer of the dark Quin burnt orange at the base. So I start thinking about value from the very beginning. We're going to put the value darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. Now I'm going to come in with cobalt right over the top. Dark here, framing in the water. Just randomly dark here and there because the paper kind of does most of the work. So I just come in and add some color over it. And I'm not real careful. See, I leave those little glows of that beautiful warm. Now on this one, I do want to be fussy. This is the selvage edge right here. I don't want it to be going up and down this time. I want it to be going across. So what I'm going to do, this is the selvage edge. I'm going to run it like this. Selvage edge. This time they are going to go back and forth this way. Let's take a look at her. Ha, look at that. See how they're going up and down? That's the way I wanted them. Whew, I got saved. So now what I'm going to do is take those off, and using my mixed color, remember I've got the pure color here, the pure color here, and then over here I've got my mixed color. And using this mixed color, I'm going to come in here and make it darker at the base. It's always darker at the base. This one's a little warmer, so I warmed up my color a bit. And I'm just going to get darker at the bottom. Then I usually take and wet my brush and come in and soften some of these areas. If they're too busy, soften a few. You don't want it to look like it's got some kind of a disease. Just, it's okay to lose a few of those textures. Now I like this warmer and this cooler. So I'm going to position this in here, and you'll get to see the whole picture. And you can see how it's starting to come together now. We're getting rocks in front of rocks. We're starting to feel the rush of the water. And here you can see how this is going horizontally. This is going vertically. That's all because of the wax paper. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to continue painting all these rocks. And when I come back, we're going to do the foliage. Got kind of a rock in the water here. These are the tricky ones. So that means the water, you're going to expose the rock a little bit. Then you're going to see that little bits of the rock here and there. And the water with the BAM, it's unequal here. It goes up and it goes down. It goes up. And you always try to capture that movement of the water. Right now, the hardest part to vignette is the bottom here. See, this is lining up in kind of a parallel line. I actually don't like that too well, but see, it's going to be dark underneath here. So this is all going to be dark going off the bottom. But here I've got a rock kind of tipped. It's just going to end, because everything just ends all the way around. Sometimes when the wax paper just isn't going to settle down, I will take and put objects on it like you saw me do here, or I'll just hold it down with my fingers, and the warmth of my fingers will just make it stay where you want it. It's pretty cool. If you take them off when they're still pretty wet, you can just take the color that's there and kind of move it around. I always like to soften these things. They're just too much texture. Almost done. Okay. Don't forget to soften and darken the bottom. And when I come back, I'll start the foliage. Well, we're going to move on now to the other element that's really important to frame in our waterfalls, and that is some foliage. But not all pictures are going to have foliage. I just like to put it in because I think it's fun to throw the paint around. And because I live next to Lake Superior, I'm actually trying to suggest that there is a lake back here. I may have some low hills. I may have some more foliage really out of focus back here. I'm not going to worry about this area. What I'm going to focus on now is just showing you how I would suggest this foliage. And I want you to notice that I've drawn basically two kinds of trees. The ones that have a dark trunk, and in the branches, I'm trying to design the branches to go all different. And then we also have the trunk that is white against a dark background, dark against a light background. So these may turn out to be dark later, but for now, I'm going to think of these as sort of like a birch tree, light against dark. This is obviously a pine tree. This is a shorter tree. And here we have a dark tree, a little bit narrower, but a lighter tree, lighter tree. And I try to not let them become every half an inch. And some of them tip a little bit. It's amazing how hard it is to do that. Because once you start drawing these, and I've done it over and over, you start making them exactly the same distance apart. And so in some cases, I'm just going to have these pine trees peeking out of the top with some other kind of foliage down below. So what we're going to do next is we're going to put in these distant rocks. What I'd like to do is show you how to paint these rocks in the background, and I actually do them differently than I do the rocks in the foreground. Can you see how precise these are? And I purposely made some warmer, some cooler, some darker, some lighter, some with the textures going up and down, some with the textures going back and forth. And so you try as hard as you can to get variety. But without fail, I try to go darker at the bottom, mid-tone light. And the reason I leave it light, obviously, is so it pops out in front of the rock in front of it. So now this is dark, but light against the rock in front of it. And so on. So all of my rocks have that light in front of the dark rock that's behind it. But now these funny little rocks back here, I'm actually going to cut them out. Not all of them, just a few of them. And you can see how easily I can do that. I can just see through the wax paper and just using one of my pens, any pen will do. Maybe I'll do one more over here. So I'm going to cut these out and then we're going to move a little closer and you'll see me paint the rocks in the background. They don't have to be exact, as you'll see. Some of these are going to be cut and some are not going to be cut. Another thing that I don't think I've mentioned is that when you paint rocks in water, always try to get the bottom where the water is equalizing and lining up straight. Keep it straight, straight, straight. And even back here, you'll see they're very straight. And there's a reason for that. It's the water. Now this one's going downhill, but there's a reason for that too, and I don't know what it is, but I like it that way. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and just very quickly cut these rocks out. Not a big deal at all. And I better remember where I got these. So this one was here. This one, oh, and I got a little bit more to cut here. Right here, and this one down here. So let's move in a little closer so you can see what's happening. Okay, we're ready to start again by wetting the rock, only this time I'm going to wet the rock beyond the rock because I want it to look kind of out of focus and in the distance. Now these rocks here are against the water, so they're going to be precise. But the ones back here, I'm going to wet beyond. See how fun that is? I'm going to start with the same two colors. Here I'm starting with my Quinacridone burnt orange. And because it's so wet, the color I put it at the bottom and just let it run up. And then I come in and go darker. And see, some of that color is running and I like that. I might even just throw a little bit of yellow because this is going to be fall. I might just throw a little yellow up here too. Remember I wet that area? Now I'm going to come over here and wet this rock and this rock. Come in with that second darker at the bottom. Now I'm going to come in with the cool cobalt. Here we're going to make them sticking out. They're very precise. These are going to be just at the way you see them. Now comes the fun part. See, I'm just going to put wax paper exactly where the rock is, and that stuff beyond could just float around. Very nice. Okay, now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to wet these rocks, but I'm going to wet them beyond. See, I'm just throwing in some water beyond the rock area. I'll come in with my Quin burnt orange at the bottom, at the bottom, at the bottom. I might even throw in some more yellow, because after all, this is a fall scene. Yellow's going to be a dominant color. So I just like having a little bit of that low grass there, having some yellow. And then I'll come in with the cobalt. Actually, I need to put a second dose of the dark orange. I almost forgot that. Just at the base. And then the cobalt. I always apply it separately. It's worth it. Now, as rocks go back, they can be at different levels in the water. So you'll notice my rocks aren't in a row. It's kind of fun. And I don't even have a rock here. I'm just going to let it be some grass. And here's our little rock, the cutout rock. So now see, that's going to make a pattern only where it's touching, just like these are. And then if I want to, I can just take and stick some little pieces of paper here. It's too easy. There. Now, as soon as those dry, we're going to be ready to go full swing into those fall trees. Okay, now while this is drying, I'm going to show you how this works. I just, on dry paper, which is why we have the white here, because I threw this paint down and it formed little patterns of what I think looks like foliage. I'm really excited about this. And then where there's, the paper is dry, so where nothing lands, you end up with these beautiful whites. And it doesn't look like a lot when you're doing it, but I try to focus on throwing the yellows in one pattern, and then I throw the dark blue, which turns into green, in another pattern, and I throw the oranges in a separate pattern, and the deeper reds in a separate pattern. So it's really important that when you're looking at fall foliage, that you're really seeing these patterns. And you will, after a while, you really get to see these patterns. And then this is what makes it work. After this dries, I mean completely dry, then I come in with a mixture of Quin burnt orange and French ultramarine blue, and I actually make these into trees. So right in here, I can make this into a tree by just coming in here and painting in the holes. It's pretty amazing. You can just see this tree evolve, and it's all put in between the holes. We'll bring it down a little bit further. Now if I want to, I can make this tree a little bigger. See, it could be a small tree, but you only paint in the holes. And then you come out and give it some branches. So to me, this is kind of magic. You do it in two parts. First you do all these lovely patterns, then you come in and you paint in the trunk itself. Now this would be a dark trunk, and see, you saw me draw some dark trunks. This would be what a light trunk is, and I haven't finished this part yet, but just by taking more really dark green, which is a mixture Quin burnt orange and Antwerp blue. See, I can make this, I can just pop this tree out later by coming in with these darks and leaving the light. And it can leave it as branches or as a tree trunk. It's way too much fun. So let me get back to the first step and I'll show you how we can pull this together later. Okay, so I'm just going to take off my little devices here. They're a little bit wet, but it's okay. And remember how I always like to take a little bit of the darker color and come in and just seat that rock. So I'm just going to do that again. If it's behind a rock, I'll make it a little darker. Anything behind a rock has to be a little bit darker. And I like the bottom of the rock to be just a little bit darker. Then I like to soften those lines. Over here, this rock is behind this rock, so it'll be just a little bit darker. This rock is in the water. I don't know if you've noticed, but when a rock gets wet in the water, it always looks darker. So that's one of the reasons we do this, because the moving water is going up the edge of that rock. Now these rocks are behind, so they have to be darker. This one's behind. We don't have to be as fussy because this is far away, but it all helps. Well, you know what? That one's still got wax paper on it. Okay, it's a lot easier to paint without it. Now to throw the paint, there is a bit of magic. You have to have a brush that releases the color. And so I'm going to use my squirrel-haired brush. This is an inexpensive oriental brush, and they're available for under $4. And then you can also use a very expensive sable brush. If you have a bunch of sable brushes, now's a good time to go through, check them out, and find one relatively small. This is not a very big brush. And what we're going to do now is we're going to mix up a lot of really cool colors. We're going to start with our primary yellow. And you can see this brush is so soft I can hardly get the paint out of there. I'm going to have to switch to a synthetic brush just to get this paint activated. I also like to activate my paint by spraying it. So right now I'm mostly interested in my yellows, my oranges, and eventually a very deep green. So I'm going to use some primary yellow. This happens to be Windsor. I'm going to use some Quinacridone gold, one of my very favorite colors. I'm not going to let these guys run together. They're going to be all applied separately. And then I'm also going to get into some of this bright Scarlet Lake. That is such a beautiful fall color. And I think that's going to be enough to get us started here. So I'm going to take my oriental brush and just in a downward motion, I'm just going to tap and create some of this very exciting textures. Now remember, my paper is dry. And over here I'm going to have some yellows in the background, just because there's a lot of yellow in the fall. And as I throw this, and lots of times I get little teeny, really tiny, they're not big enough. So what I do is I just take and I just dip it in here and come back and throw it. Dip it in the water, come back and just throw it, and you can see what it does. It really makes those yellows nice and big. So like I said, yellow is a dominant color. And then I also like to just soften some of these into some really beautiful lost edges. And this is a vignette, so we're going to come in and have some of these edges just lost. I'm going to still try to save a little bit of white up here. And I don't mind losing a few edges down here too. So we'll just, with the water on our little brush, we'll just do that. Now I'm not done. I've still got a little bit to go over here. So again, I hold the brush about in the middle, and then I pick up a big load of paint, and with a downward tap. In other words, when I hit the bottom, I tap it. Down and tap. And it looks easy, and it is easy. Now you can see they're too small. That's easy. I put the brush in the water, and I come out and I just hit it again. Brush in the water, come out, hit it again. Brush in the water, come out and hit it again. Now the other thing I want is I want some of these edges to be lost. So I'm just sort of swooping in here and allowing some of these edges just to melt out. How fun is that? So I'm melting the edges down here, and I'm melting the edges up here. Now we're going to go to some other colors. Quin Gold is an excellent color because what happens is when you have yellow trees, you're always going to have some leaves that die. And so I'm going to come in and put in some nice deeper yellows. And you can see already how pretty it looks. Now the same thing's happening. See, I need to dip my brush in water and just get those patterns bigger. Here we go. Now I don't want it all over, so I'm going to skip a little area and then come over here. Oh, I like it already. Now I'm going to add some orange trees. And believe me, when you look into a fall landscape, you actually see the red trees kind of focused in one area. So I'm going to take this gorgeous, ooh, I'm telling you, Scarlet Lake. Let's have a red tree right here. So I'm going to stick with the red trees only in some areas, not all over. Now if you find throwing the paint just isn't going to work, you can just touch it. It's a little bit harder, I think, because we tend to touch it too much and we make lines like I just made one here. But try whatever, you have to do what works for you. And if it's not working to do this way, try another. So now I have a lovely orange tree right here. And I'm going to have another orange tree, maybe some low color over here. Maybe some sumac or something over here. Like that. Yum. And again, I like this lost look. So I'm just going to soften a few of these edges in here. If it softens too much or runs into something, if you're getting spots where you didn't want them, that's what tissues are for. I can soften this a little bit if I want. So now I have those two areas. They're kind of equally spaced. I might just throw a little bit here. I'm going to have a little bit of an orange tree in here too. And I'll skip it over here. So we got a skinny one here, a bigger one here, low one here. Now this next color is the most important color. And there really are no colors that can do it as well as this color I'm going to tell you about. Antwerp Blue. Antwerp Blue has a very special place on my palette. For one thing, it is, look at it, it's a gorgeous blue. The other thing is, it goes all the way to a value 9. See, manganese doesn't, cobalt doesn't, but Antwerp goes all the way to a value 9. It also has yellow in it. That's why it's placed over here close to my yellow. And because it has yellow in it, it really has a personality problem. It really wants to be green. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start by throwing the pure color. I just dripped on my paper. There we go. So I'm going to put this pure color in here, and it's going to turn green all by itself. So now watch. I'll just throw some down here. Pick it up. Down and tap, down and tap, down and tap. And remember, if you don't like doing it that way, you can simply hold your brush and say I want this to be a tall pine tree. I'll just shape it like a pine tree. Remember this white tree here? What I can do is come in and carefully put these dark, dark colors and stop and go to the other side. Dark, 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 dark. Go next to this tree and stop. And all of a sudden, you are going to start to see this tree. Now, I'm not drawing a straight line. This is the part that's hard for people to understand. They want to start outlining the whole thing. But you don't want to do that. You just want to go from one side to the next and kind of establish just enough that you can see that white trunk. That's it right there. Good. And I think we'll do some low foliage over here and just kind of work our way across. Again, if you want it bigger, just throw some water in there. That'll do it. A little bit too much water. I think I'll just lift that out. Oh, I like accidents. It just gives me a thrill. Okay, so I'm going to dig out lots more paint here. And we're going to come in here. Now, when the same color goes in with the red, that orangey color, it's really pretty. It makes a beautiful dark. See, it almost makes black. Whereas here it's making green. We'll get a little more black over here. But we should get a lot more green over here. A little more water. And you can see what I have here. I have another tree that I think would look nice white. So I just touch in next to the tree, saving the white. And now over here, ooh, I like this. We've got some little trees peeking out. So I'm just going to do these by hand. Just touch my brush to the paper, and you can see it just comes out as kind of cool little trees. And then later we'll give them trunks, although I can give them a little bit of a trunk now. Now, if I want, I can combine. I could actually make a nice green. Take some of this yellow and just make a nice green, a little bit lighter for some of the low foliage. And just suggest a few more things over here. And remember, these don't have to be trees at this time. I did draw in where I want the trees, but they can be decided later. So I'm just going to come in now and soften some edges. And out here where we're leading to the edge of the paper, I'm just going to let it melt. Just melt it right out. I might even throw in just a little bit more of that beautiful gold. I really like that color. And the good thing about gold is when the Antwerp reaches the gold, it makes a different color than when the Antwerp touches the yellow. Now if I want to, I can do some low foliage, just suggest something growing. So I like it so far. It's kind of suggestive. This area here I'm going to pull back just a little. I'm going to pull this back just a little so these trees can have a little more prominence. Soften a few more areas down here. And when colors dry, they dry so much lighter. I'm thinking of just throwing in a few more really bright colors. Notice I changed brushes. I just wanted to get a few more of these really bright oranges in here. I love this in a fall scene. So with a synthetic brush, you can have more control. And if I want to add just a little bit more of this really, really dark, beautiful Antwerp, I can put that in. You can see how I'm popping out a white tree. This will be a dark tree. This is going to be a white tree over here, so I'm going to come in with just a little bit more identity here for that tree. Maybe I'll have two white trees next to each other. So that's it. We're going to let this dry, and the real fun is going to come with our next session when we're going to start working with the reflections, the falling water, the backup water, and the falling water, and the big bam at the end. So I'm going to close now with just coming in with a little bit of salt. This is regular table salt, and I'm just going to put a little bit in some of these edges that are soft. Right above the rocks, some of these edges up here that are very soft. I'm not putting any salt in the focal area where the paper is dry and you see all these hard whites. Don't touch that. But if you really want to put a little salt, you can do it along these lost edges and along these lost edges. So see you in a little bit. Well, here we are the next day. Everything's bone dry. I got rid of some of the salt, and I usually do it with the Braille method. see, I can just feel a little bit of that salt. I should mention that anytime you are getting rid of salt, don't just throw it on the floor, especially if you have a carpet, because the salt actually takes away the paint. Imagine what it's doing to your carpet. Well, anyway, I'm very pleased with this little underpainting for our foliage. It's amazing how sometimes this works really well and sometimes it doesn't work as well as I'd like, but I'm very pleased with this. So we're going to move in a little closer and we're going to talk about how to finish this. And one of the things we want to do is we want to treat it like there's two styles of trees. And I mentioned this when we were throwing down or actually just touching in some of the colors. One is I tried to save a light tree, which is going to be against the dark background. And then I just knew that if I left some open shapes here, I could come in with darks and make the dark trees. So I'm going to start with the dark trees. And what I like to do is take a mixture of Quinacridone burnt orange. If you don't have that color, remember you can always use burnt sienna. So we're going to use Quinacridone burnt orange and French ultramarine blue. Now the reason I'm using French ultramarine blue is because it's so dark and it's just beautiful. Cobalt doesn't get dark enough. French ultramarine will take this all the way to a value 9. So we're going to start like with some of the trees I already drew in. And the fun part is I'll have a tissue handy because I want it a little softer as it goes into the foliage here. But the idea is we're just going to paint in between the holes. I think this is so much fun. And then we're going to stop when we get up to our vignette area. And then usually I pick a hole to come out with some of the extended branches. And this is sort of a miracle, I think. It's so much fun just to see it come to life. Here we could have some branches that go in front and some that go in between the holes. And there could even be like a little smaller tree next to this. And that littler tree could have all kinds of little things coming out. Now these appear to be lighter. Let's put a dark tree over here too. Again, a little dab as we get closer to the bottom. Keep it nice and dark as we're moving up. As we get up here again, we could dab it. And I'm just using my little script brush. I love this brush. It gives me a fairly thin line. If the line isn't thin enough for you, you can always use like a number 1. A number 1 works quite well too. So look at that. We've already got trees. Oh, I love it. Now the tricky part comes when we get into these guys. So this looks like another tree to me. One of the things I wanted to reaffirm is when you're looking at trees, pictures of trees, look at how this tree appears to be much warmer orange, a darker orange. Usually there's a lot more yellow, but this happened to be the first image I saw this morning. Here too, you can see the beautiful yellow oranges next to the very, very dark evergreens. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here. I'm trying to keep, remember how I threw the oranges only here, here, and along here. None over here. So don't get too salt and peppery on this, where the colors are all mixed. Try to keep them focused so you feel like this is a fall scene. Now this appears to be another tree, so obviously I'll just come in, give it some branches. Right through here into the nice soft foreground. Maybe there'll be a second tree here. Oh boy, I mean I could turn this into a forest. And I might. It's so much fun. Now if you happen to have areas that are really, really light, maybe you didn't get your color in as heavy as you could have. You know, got to go with what you have. But whenever I have areas that are really light, like over here, sometimes I actually paint on top of the color. So let's put a couple over here. There appears to be a small tree here. So we'll just come in with some little lightweight branches supporting a smaller tree. As we come in, soften. And then this looks like a tall pine trees. Oh, I love pine trees. So we're going to give that pine tree, oh, I'm going to go even a little bit heavier. They're pretty big, especially this tall. Soften as we get up the top. And they frequently have branches that go straight out. So let's give this a really nice straight branch here. Another one over here. They still go up. They go down. At the bottom, they tend to go down. If you ever walk through the woods, you'll remember all the brushes into those pine trees. And this appears to be another pine tree here. All right, we got it. And this one, I'm just going to give a few, not as many branches, just a couple. But I am going to bring it down a little lower. And, ooh, this is coming together really nice. Now over here, I might lighten up. See, you know, when we get to the edges of a vignette, we want to go a little softer. So I just added a little water to my mixture so it's not as dark. And I'm just going to add some lighter branches, lighter trunks, softer as it goes into our foliage at the base. Maybe one more here. Oh, it's hard to stop. Now I was talking about when your colors are softer, very often I will paint right over the foliage, not just in the holes. So just make a judgment, whatever works for you. And I think that's enough. Now let's get to the light trees. For the light trees, I'm going to do, remember I have this really dark mixture for the dark trees? All I did was add a little water to it, and now it's a light mixture. And for this lighter mixture, that's going to be the tree that's coming out, the lighter tree. So this is probably some kind of a birch tree, and they just have some lovely grays. So we're just going to give it some lovely grays, soften. As we come to the base here, we'll soften it a bit. And over here, we'll just give them a little bit of a gray tone. Saving it mostly as white. But where it comes out the bottom, we're going to make it darker. Same here, we'll make it a little bit darker as it comes out. And then if I want to, I can still add just a little bit of dark. So now I'm going into my dark just to give the base of this tree, even though it's a light tree, when it comes out, it's got to be darker. So don't be afraid to go a little darker with your light tree, especially up here where it's in the softer colors. See, it looks nice. So now I'm just adding a little bit darker value where it's out in the light areas. Now down here, if we want to, we can go into some lighter greens. So by just taking some yellow and mixing it in, pure, any primary yellow, mixed in with our Antwerp blue. And see, I like to load my brush by just taking the script brush, just rolling it through like this. And now if we want to, we can give it some greeny kind of grass down here. Ooh, I love it. So we'll just keep coming in here. A few little greeny grasses. A lot of time in the fall, this is more of a spring green. You might want to go into some of these oranges. You frequently see oranges in the fall. So I might just add a little bit of the orange color down here. So in terms of finishing my foliage, I'm going to keep it soft. I'm going to keep it not too developed because I want this to look like distance. So we're ready for the big waterfall reflection. I've been looking forward to this. And as it turns out, I'm quite pleased with my foliage. I really like the variety going between the light trees and the dark trees and the smaller foliage. And in this case, even the distant water is going to add a lot of depth to the piece. So when I'm back here, I'm going to try to keep the colors grayer because distance is always grayed out. And then as we come forward here to this area here is actually going to have reflections. So I'm going to be adding in some oranges under the orange, some yellow under the yellow, some dark green under the dark green. So really in preparation, because I'm not painting the whole waterfalls at once, this is the good news. You just do each section at a time. So what we're going to do is we're going to prepare. So when we want these colors, we got them. So we're going to have some yellows. We're going to have some of the golds. Don't need a lot, but it's just nice to have them already activated. And we're going to have some of this lovely orange. This is Scarlet Lake. Oh, I love this color. Sometimes you can't get that color. And if that happens, if you ever go to the store and they don't have any Scarlet Lake, you can always get organic vermilion. For a while, we couldn't get it. And that's what we had to use. Now, we also need a very dark, that evergreen. So what I do is I take Antwerp blue and just a little bit of Quinacridone burnt orange. And that turns it into a lovely, lovely dark, dark green. And see, that's basically what we have up there. So now we're ready to go. And what I'm going to use for the water itself is a mixture of cobalt, same colors we used to make our rocks, cobalt and Quin burnt orange, mostly cobalt. So I'm going to get a lot more cobalt on here. And you can see how that's a little bit grayed down, but we need a lot of water. So I'm just going to come in with a lot of water. We're ready to go. We've got our reflections, we've got our water. And you remember this lovely brush. This is actually part of your gift card. And what I'm going to do with this is show you what a dry brush technique. So just taking some of this mixture, and when we get to the water, we're going to drag this along. We're going to just drag it along like this. And see how it leaves those lovely white shapes? We need those white shapes in the water to create like the little surfy parts, the little breaking waves. It's really beautiful. And now you can't do this with just any brush. It has to be a crummy, little like a squirrel hair brush. And see, it just gives these lovely dry brush. So just practice again. Get yourself a little place. An old piece of paper, the back of a painting. And this will give you the horizontal, all landscapes are horizontal. It will also give you those little breaking shapes. Now the way I like to do it, so you'll see me do both. I like to take and throw it. See, and what I do is accomplish a similar effect. So I throw mine, and then I frequently will do a combination of the two. See, I'll just draw it across, and it will give me some areas darker, So let's get started and we'll try it both ways. Back here, we definitely need a very light version, kind of a gray color. So the first thing I'm going to do is just come in here with my brush, stroke it across, line it up with the very back. Make sure measure this line. Your horizon line has to be straight. It's funny. And now we're going to just keep pulling this, leaving some of those white shapes, pulling this around into our picture. And now we're going to continue pulling this. Notice how I've gotten a little more blue in it now. So we're going to continue pulling this in. Oops, that was close. Don't forget, this is vignette. I got to back up here. I'm just going to wet this with water. Just let it melt. Whew, that was close. Now remember, this is just cobalt with a little bit of Quin burnt orange in it. And I'm starting to get just a little bit darker, more blue, as we pull it across here. So what I usually do is just a little section at a time. So we're just going to pull this across. Saving some of those whites. Ooh, now we're getting to where it wants to go over. It's going to start falling into this. Oh my goodness. So we're going to just do it. We're going to make it a little bit darker here, and it's going to fall into this. So we've got that directional movement of the water coming down. Appears to be coming from different angles. And look how wonderful this brush is. It's so great. Now I still want to soften some of this, so I'm just going to throw a little water, or with just with this brush, just clean. See, I can kind of soften this so it looks nice and wet. And I don't want to focus on the waterfall yet, but I just had to do a little bit of that. So what I need to do now is I need to come in, and I'm going to do this with a second brush. This is a regular brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start reflecting some of these greens up here. These would reflect directly under here, and directly under these would be the same color, Quin burnt orange, cobalt blue, and so these rocks would actually be reflecting right directly under them. So see, you put the blue down first, and then you just let that color go beneath it. Good enough. Now we're going to come in with some of the yellows here. And the yellows, I'm actually going to just kind of throw some of those in directly underneath. And look at what's here, an orange. Yes. So we're right directly under that orange. We're going to come in and put, well, maybe not that much. I always have a tissue in my hand. So we're just going to come in with a little bit of orange here. Great. And even some of this golden color here would kind of come down here. Beautiful. I'm happy. Now let's go back to our mixture, Quin burnt orange, cobalt blue, mostly cobalt, lots of water. Let me show you. I'm coming in mostly cobalt, a little bit of the Quin burnt orange. Here's the gray mixture. Here's lots of water. So now we're going to move across to this area. And we're going to start with our dry brush. So I'm just going to come in here with the horizontal shapes of the dry brush, drag it across, and it's just going to come all the way across here. I really like working on this stretched paper. This is cool. And we do have these available already stretched for $25. What a deal. Okay, here we go. All the way. Now we're going to join this. I'm not going to worry about the fall yet. I'm just going to do the water. And that's what I like about this painting like this. You can just do sections of it. Starting to fall here. I want it a little bit darker as we get closer to the waterfall, the top of the fall here. So I'm putting just a little bit more blue in it. And I'm going to get the water right into the rock here. And I'm going to take some clean water and just soften this end here. There's our vignette. Hey, done. This time I'm going to start with my orange, and I'm just going to do a little flicking here. There's a little orange. Nice. Here, this is a different orange. It's my Windsor orange, so I'm going to flick some of that in. It's up here. I'll just do a little bit more. A little bit in here. And a little bit of gold. See the gold up here? And then I'm going to come in with the pure yellow. This is way too much fun. And it's very yellow over here. So I'm just going to put in more yellow, bump right into the back here. And of course our dark green. And that's mostly in here. A little bit in here at the very bottom. Whoops. See what I mean about this releases the paint? You could get in trouble. And most importantly, we're going to now focus. We don't have too much more reflecting to do, so I'm going to clean this up. This is the most important part now. The Quin burnt orange. Let's get a big gob of it here. And the cobalt blue. And now pulling those two together, we definitely have to do the dark under these rocks. Just pull that under each rock. Very cool. Done. Now comes the big falls. Oh boy. Oh, the fun's starting now. Before I move to this waterfall, take a look and evaluate, because look at, I can just take my time. I love the fact that I don't have to be rushing. And I'm starting to be a little concerned because we have equal value. I might even end up coming back to darken some of these rocks. And another thing is I haven't really taken into account these dark stems, trunks. The light trunks would come back as a light, but the water, we have to remember the water is also rushing, and rushing water doesn't do a lot of reflecting. So I'm just going to do ever so little of this dark, kind of from, if it's this direction, it's the opposite. And you have to think, okay, it's that far down, so it's really kind of not real important, but it's just kind of fun. So I'm just going to put in a few of these little suggestions of the trunks. And then if you want to, you can do this. You can, this trunk of this white tree would come down in this direction. See, and you could actually lift out what looks like a little bit of white. But enough of that. Let's get going on this wonderful waterfall. One of the things we want to do with the waterfall is we want to keep this really white. It's falling water. So we're going to have tissue handy, and wherever we can, we're going to lift out some atmospheric lights. So I'm going to start right now lifting out a few of these whites here. And I'm going to get my brush loaded up. Lots of very blue, cool. A little bit of Quinburnt orange, mostly cool. And I'm looking now at the falling water. You can see a lot of my pencil lines. So I'm just going to come in from dark to light and create some of these movements coming in. A little bit here. I love this dry brush. Oh, this brush is fantastic. So again, we're going to just pick up a little bit of this falling water. It's coming down, coming down, coming down. And then in order to show the whiteness of this water, we have to put some color in here. So I'm just going to brush across a little bit of color down here. And there's so much bam. I don't really need to do much. It's just kind of rolling over that bam. So I'm just focusing on this dropping water, but I want it to be really wet now. So I'm going to come in with clean water, and this is going to be the part where the water is just going up. Bam. But it has to be wet. It has to have a little color in it. So we're going to wet it. Remember, we did this in our practice. And I'm going to take clean tissue. Clean tissue, dab it back. Dab it down here. Dab it back. I still want a little bit more. So you have to put a little bit color down there if you want it to look like something's happening. So don't be afraid to get a little bit of color there. Then get it wet. Then dab it away. So you put it down, you take it away. It's really kind of fun. And do it as long until you're happy with what you've got. I'm not happy yet, so it looks like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I am. And I just love being able to focus on one thing. This is really great. Okay, I think we're getting there. Now the other thing I'm going to depend on, good old salt. Good old salt. So I've got a lot of bam. Now I'm just throwing my table salt right through there. I might even put a little table salt up here. And just in case all my fooling around this got dry, I'm just going to spray it a little bit. Now we have the backwater here. And the backwater is the reflection again this white water, and then it backs up. It's very dark back here. And let me show you, this is a picture I've done already. And you can see now the BAM. And what we need to do in here now is create these reflections, very dark. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab our oriental brush, and sometimes I even flay it out a little bit. Load her up. And the first thing we're going to do is go back to the horizontal. It's coming this way. Now we have to remember this is going to reflect. So we're just going to put this underneath, tight to the rock. Reflections are darker than the object. Save some whites. Tight to the rock here, save some whites. And what we're going to try to do is make it look like this is a reflection of that waterfalls. And see, if it goes this direction here, it's going to go this direction here. So we're going to pull that across this way. Tight to the rock here. And it's going to just kind of go in and out. Save those whites. Now I'm putting more color in my brush. More blue. Now as I roll down here, my rocks are dark. That's a no-brainer. If the rocks are dark, we're going to make the water light. So I'm just going to wet the water, let it become soft and light, and it will pop out the rocks. Soft and light. Now, we also have our vignette, so again, every now and then I'll just soften this. And then the other thing is, this is going to reflect the color it is. So that's easy. We're going to take the blue, we're going to add more Quinburnt orange to it, and directly under the rock we're going to start adding this warmer color. But we don't want to lose those lovely little white shapes. Notice how I paint around them. Just, and it'll only reflect as deep as it is. So we'll just throw a little more here. Good. Now we're ready to think about maybe just a little bit of that falling water in here, coming down, just with my dry brush again. And then always I like to worry about the BAM. And right in here there'll be a little bit of BAM and a little bit of salt. There. We have another backup water over here. And again, whenever the water goes into these backwaters, they're going to reflect. So we're going to get out our, if I can find it, there we go, my oriental brush, mostly blue, little bit of Quinburnt orange, and we're going to, in a very horizontal way, drag it across, right up to the edge of the rock, right up to the edge of the rock here. And right up here. First thing I'm going to do, soften this We got our vignette. The next thing I'm going to do is soften here around the rock, so it's just a little bit lighter behind that rock. And then you know what I'm going to do next? I'm going to pick up some of this color, the color of the rock, and put it directly underneath like a reflection. But I'm not going to lose those lovely little whites. Just in between all those whites, right tight up to the rock. I'd have to lose a few here. And reflections are darker than what they're reflecting. So it won't hurt just to come in and add an additional little boost of dark. Nice. So let's look at the whole thing, get a nice overview. As I'm looking at this, I like the darks under the rocks. I'm thinking I could go a hair darker over here. We're down to the last, bam! Oh boy, this is exciting. So the water is actually funneling down tighter and tighter, so this is going to be the biggest rush here. So I'm just going to come in again with my dry brush. My poor little brush, let's open it up a little bit. Let's move in just a little bit. Okay, we're going to take our blue, mostly blue, a little bit of orange, and this water, we're just thinking now about this water, it's just rolling across here, darker under here, and it's just starting to fall. Ooh, look at that. Starting to fall in here. Over here, same thing, it's just dry brush it across. It's a little darker now. Got a little more color in my brush. And it's starting down. But I want it to be wet. See how I'm just coming in now with water? Wash. Now down here, this is a big bam area. So I'm going to start with my dry brush right here, directly under this rock. And because we're doing the vignette, I gotta be very aware that I can't go off the bottom of the page. This has been my biggest concern, that I'll go off the bottom. So far, so good. Okay, here we go. Dry brush, connect to the bottom, dry brush, connect, save whites, same old thing. This is my big bam, so I'm gonna come back here with some white tissue. Ooh, this is fun. Now over here, it's gonna be dark under this and dry. A little bit of this color is going to come down below this bam. And a little bit here. But then I got to wet this and take it away. Best part. Oh, I love this. And now all we have to do is a little bit of dry brush under these. The water's swirling around in between these rocks, falling down here. So we just have to talk to ourselves. What do I need to do? First of all, I need to lose some of these edges. across the bottom too. Might leave those crisp. I think I'll leave some of these softer. And darker. Now we're going to take the mixture, Quin Burnt Orange, and we're going to go darker under these rocks. Darker under the rock. Darker in here. Under here. A little bit under here. And under here. A bit warmer over here. Wow, we're almost done. This is exciting. And here. Now, it's really fun. I can see some of the salt working for me. And actually, really happy. We're going to back up here a little bit. Soften. Don't forget the salt. So right over here, we're going to have some bam, bam. A little bit of bam over here. I might have a little bam in there too. Time to back it up. Take a look. Well, it's pretty exciting to look at the finished piece. Oh man, I'm quite happy with the reflections. I see this one little white area here I don't like. So I'm just going to take my brush here, my very inexpensive brush, and I'm just going to come in and brush some little shapes over it. I don't like it. So you can always make some corrections. I do feel it needs to be just a little bit darker here. I'm quite happy with this area. I can see the bam happening. Oh, this is so fun. And the bam here looks like it's starting. That salt, between the salt and the beautiful white shapes, the salt is happening in here. I think things went quite well. I hope they go well for you. I'll be back in a while to show you how to finish this. It has to dry first. Well, everything's dry. I actually feel like I need a drum roll. Get rid of the bam. So, I'm just gonna clean it up. You can see the bam. Oh, fun. Between the bam and the salt, I'm pretty happy here. Now this stuff is even worse than salt, so make sure this masking, make sure that doesn't go on the floor. Here, ooh, we've got some masking coming up here. Over here. I always think I can even do more bam, but this is what I've got. Really happy with the salts. Now, if you have areas that are too obvious, too hard, there's also another little trick you need to know about, and that is what we call a scrubber brush. And what I've done is I've just taken some oil painting brushes, snipped off half of the hair, and by dampening this, and if you want to, you can come in and you can soften some of these areas. So I'm going to move in close. It's a very subtle thing, but it is important. So I'm going to move in so you can see what I'm doing. On some of these areas, for some reason, it's quite a bit of white here. So just with this dampened brush, see what I can do? I can come in here and soften some of these areas. I'll leave some hard, but I'm going to leave others soft. And especially here where it's more atmospheric, I'm going to push back some of this, oops, keep some of these areas soft. Over here, soften a few areas. Over here. Usually in the up and down movement, I soften them. And like I say, it's very subtle, but I think it's important because the water doesn't always have these crisp edges. Some crisp, some soft. So just by using, and you can also help with the directional movement. The water over here is falling at a different angle. So we'll clean up here. I like my bam. Ooh, I love all this. See, I love all this stuff in here. But it's a little bit hard in here. Let's soften some of it so it looks more like water. And this bam over here turned out pretty cool. We'll just do a little bit of softening. If you need some more whites, you can actually lift out with this. It has to be wet. You just come in. Now, one of the things I purposely did is I picked colors that are non-staining. So other than the Windsor yellow and the Windsor orange in my foliage, all the Quinacridone burnt orange, cobalt blue, the French ultramarine blue, all those colors can be lifted. So it's really kind of cool. If I want to, I can just lift out any of these colors that aren't working. It's a little bit hard edged in here. So again, I'm just going to come in, and here and there I'm going to soften a few of these edges. Thinking about the movement of the water, coming down, down, soften a few. Lost and found. It's one of my favorite things to do. Again, it's got some nice bam. This is too much fun. Okay, now one of the other things that I want to share with you is cleaning up. Very often you'll have just a few little spots of color you don't like. So what I do is I just use Q-tips. I wet the Q-tip on each end, and see, like right here, this blue color that I didn't mean to have here, gone. And what we think we should do is take a tissue and just rub it. That's a very bad idea. It's much better to take a wet Q-tip and in a back and forth movement, just turning it so you're always on a nice clean surface. Even Antwerp blue is a non-staining color. I can lift that color. And so these are some of the dots from my foliage that I didn't mean to have all over the place. And there we are, lifting them up, not a piece of cake. I have a few little spots down here. Just dampen the Q-tip with a slow motion that I'm turning. See, I'm turning it all the while I'm using it. And any of these little dots that I don't want, so far so good. Now, sometimes I'll have an edge where I think there's too many edges all lined up in a row. Like here, these are all kind of lined up. So 1, 2, 3 in a row. How about if I take the one in the middle, and by just a slow, methodical turning, see how dirty it got? Now I'm going to wet the other half, and with just a slow, methodical turning, we'll move it back. Now we have 3 different edges. fact, I really prefer to have the water softer. So let's just lift it away. Any dots I don't want, gone. And over here, like along the edge, you're always going to have, especially when you do a vignette style, you're always going to have a few edges that you can't help it. You drip on, and you want your edges to be clean. So now with just this little Q-tip, you should be able to clean these up. This one's being a little stubborn. I don't know why. And here too, even this water is kind of hard. So I'm going to soften it up here. Leave it hard here. Soften it a little bit here. And leave it hard here. While we're looking at our finished painting, how exciting. Now, because I've stretched this on this full gallery wrap, all I have to do is put a wire in the back, hang it on the wall, and we're done. But we do have to give this, because it's just unprotected paper now. This is not canvas. This has to be protected. So just like when we were painting on top of the canvas that we had prepared with the core cold pressed ground, we can use the same product. It's the Dorland's Wax Medium. It's just a lovely white wax. And you just smear it all over. And I do it very methodically. I put a glove on and just start in one corner and just work my way until I've done the entire piece. Then I usually heat it up with a hairdryer, and we have that on one of our previous lessons. So that you'll be able to see this done from start to finish. The other thing you can do is you can spray it with 4 to 5 coats of ultraviolet resistant clear acrylic coating, and you can see it comes in a matte and a gloss. And this is a wonderful product, but it is very toxic. It's something you have to go outside and do. Well, right now outside it's snowing and it's cold. So what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how to spray this. Well, we're just going to go ahead and give you a facsimile of how this should be sprayed. First of all, it should be upright. You should have your name signed and finished. Like I'm going to add a little sky. Of course, I need a signature. And when it's completely done, all the masking removed, all the salt removed, then you're ready to step outside. I always check the wind direction. I put the wind on my back. And it comes in a gloss and a matte. I like the gloss better. And it has to be shaken very, very well. And what the biggest mistake people make is they start spraying and they go like this. And they do a continuous spray. Next thing you know, they've got drips coming down the side. So really, it's a very simple way to do it. You shake it well, you come in, and you only spray as you're passing across, and then you stop. So more like release, 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 release. And then what I do is I spray this side, and then give it a few seconds to dry and flip it. And when you flip it, it's the same thing. Spray, release, do the edge and turn it again. And so by the time you get around, you have given it 4 coats. And 4 coats is pretty much all you need. Well, regardless of how you finish your piece, I just hope you really enjoy painting it. It's been fun sharing with you.